Welcome, everyone. It's so nice to have you part of the session today. One of the big things that we're experiencing is here in South Africa, there's a big portion of the money that's either coming in or going out. And you're going to think, well, why is it coming in? Why is it going out? Well, you're listing a property and you're getting a buyer from an international country. And they're going, hey, we want to invest in South Africa. Why? Well, our exchange rate is so favorable. You can buy a multi-million rand house, which is just a couple of pennies or cents for them in their country. But then on the reverse, we've got clients that are selling their houses and then they're looking to immigrate and they're wanting to push their money that's going out of the country. But is it only selling of properties? Well, one thing that I've come to realize is the company that we're going to be chatting with, Currencies Direct, it's not only in property transfers, but it's actually money. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, why do we need a company like Currencies Direct? Because, it's a simple process. We're in a digital world. We just go pay and send. But I want you to think of it like this. Currencies Direct is dealing with over 40 different currencies. And if you think of every currency as a different language, now, if you're in one language and you want to speak to somebody else in a different language, you're going to need a translator. Why? Well, with that translator, they will give you the real information. They'll make sure that it's authentic and everything goes through. And from my understanding, this is what Currencies Direct is able to do for us. It's actually translating the currencies from one, call it currency, to another. But most importantly, making sure that the money actually lands there in the shortest possible time. So joining me today is Matt. Matt, is it Matt or Matthew? Let's just get that correction out of the way.
Listen, I think it depends if it's my mother and she's giving me a good talking to, but generally known as Matt. Matthew, either way.
Absolutely. So joining me is Matt from Currencies, and we've got to make sure that we get the plural inside there because they don't only deal with one currency, they deal with multiple. So just remember that. So Currencies Direct. Matt, thank you so much for coming on to this particular call. Give me a high-level overview of who are you in Currencies Direct? What is your involvement and how did you come into this particular sphere?
No, with pleasure, Stuart. Thanks very much once again for having me. We've obviously been working with the eXp business now for a couple of years. I've known Andrew Thompson personally for many years and worked with him in other projects in my prior existence. In terms of my history, I've been in payments now, so cross-border payments for about 20 years. I was part of an entrepreneurial business for a long time, which actually sold to Currencies Direct about 7 years ago. So that's how I integrated into the Currencies Direct business. I was part of a small firm based here in South Africa, specifically actually sending money out of South Africa mainly at that point in time. And then the Currencies Direct business, which is a global brand, much like eXp, not quite as big as eXp, but on our way to hopefully a similar trajectory. Currencies Direct has been around about 30 years, and then they looked to integrate into the South African market, and they made an acquisition, and a business I was involved in was then, I suppose, commandeered into the Currencies Direct brand. Subsequently, a couple of years ago, I ended up taking over the sales function within the Currencies Direct business across Southern Africa, where I suppose our focus on the property sector became far more aggressive probably about 2 years ago, as we saw the niche and the need increase for South African properties. In terms of immigration funds has been a big part of my career. South Africans for the past 20, 30 years have immigrated and looked to go to different parts of the world. So we would assist them through that process. In South Africa, you have numerous rules and regulations which restrict the free flow of funds. Okay, so exchange control regulations is what they're actually known by. And that limits the amount of money you can take out of South Africa. It doesn't limit the amount of money that you can bring in. And therefore, all we really do is, I suppose, a bit like selling a house. We offer a high-level service and make sure that all the sort of T's are crossed and the dots and the I's are dotted, and then ultimately the process is as smooth and seamless for your client as possible. When converting currency from rands to another country, okay, dependent, you've got your major currencies, so your dollar, euro, pound. you know, and then you've got your minor currencies. So that might be to Mauritian rupees. It could be into Swedish krona. We can facilitate all of those payments, both into and out of the country. Because we're regulated across the globe, it makes it far easier for your international buyers of property to utilize Currencies Direct. You know, there's many businesses like ours across the globe, and many in South Africa as well. But in terms of our strengths in the South African market is that I can actually receive local currency in the country that it's sourced from, because we banked and are regulated across the globe. So it gives us a lot of power in terms of integrating and servicing your entire client base. A bit of history on Currencies Direct. Currencies Direct started nearly 30 years ago, okay, in London. And basically the reason for that is many British people upon retirement look to find a sunnier climate. And the main climate that they chose over those years is actually Spain. So we've got 16 offices in Spain where we assist mainly British expats sending money into Spain or selling. You know, I suppose a lot of them retire, move their money to Spain, buy a house in Spain, spend their retiree life there for 10 years, and then they'll shoot home for NHS, free medical care. So then they'll be selling their property and converting the euros back into pounds. So we've now obviously expanded aggressively across the globe. We've got 4 offices in Portugal. We've got offices in France, Australia and New Zealand, the USA. We've actually even got a setup in Brazil now. So in terms of growth and expansion, there are many opportunities in the markets that we serve. But in the South African space, our main niche is property, but we deal in a lot of wealth management payments. So South Africans investing abroad, we facilitate those payments. You've also got a deceased estates market where a lot of South Africans that unfortunately pass away, but then they leave some funds for the beneficiaries of their beneficiaries, and their beneficiaries might be abroad. So we facilitate those types of payments. But money in and out of South Africa is our specialty. So whether it's property related or, you know, import exports, there's dozens of different reasons why you would need a company like ours. But it's mainly a service offering. Make it seamless, pain-free for your clients. How easily can we actually execute the transaction, keeping everybody in the know? When you've sold a house to a foreign national, let's say German, for example, you're not necessarily knowing where the money is along the way if he's just utilizing his own bank. In terms of using us, he's going to get a cost-effective exchange rate, okay? But ultimately, he's going to get handheld along the way. It's quite daunting when buying a house in Africa, you know, unless people have been here for a long time. There are still perceptions. We know otherwise. That's why I happily live in Ballito, in actual fact, even though the majority of our market is probably the Western Cape. But certainly in KZN, Johannesburg, we are starting to see, because in terms of our expansion, it's really just looking to service the international flows of funds, you know, international buyers of property, international sellers, South Africans immigrating. You might have offshore tenants that are looking to pay rent into South Africa. We've got a seamless app that you can utilize to execute those payments. You know, I think we've helped 1 or 2 of your eXp agents with bringing their own funds back in from the shareholdings that you guys have in terms of your systems. So there's lots and lots of opportunities where we can integrate into your business.
Fantastic. Now, that's given us a huge overview, and I've got a couple of questions just on the back of that's come out. And the big question that's come in, and thank you for sharing where Currencies Direct is, 30 years old. You're definitely not a little player in the actual industry.
No, not at all.
But let's actually go down. Why use a company like yourself? You could just go into a local bank, you fill out one of those particular forms if you want to send your money out, and hope and pray that it will land on the other side. Or alternatively, if you've got money that's coming in, they could just go into their bank and they can fill it out. What are the benefits of using Currencies Direct besides being able to track it?
No, for sure. So there's obviously the first and foremost is going to be price. In terms of foreign currency, that's a very big hidden cost. that the banks don't necessarily highlight as transparently as they could do. So when you're converting currency, you can, if you go into your local bank, you're going to pay anywhere from 3 to 5% more than what you potentially need to pay. So first and foremost is price, okay? Second thing we spoke about is obviously the service, but the service isn't really just about somebody holding your hand. Because of the rules and regulations, when money comes into South Africa, there's certain what they call balance of payments categories. So these categories basically disclose the reason for the money transfer, and the reporting of those funds is so exceptionally important for when you're trying to remit the money back out of the country. If it hasn't been reported correctly on the inward payment, then 5-10 years later, when you're trying to take those funds out, it becomes an absolute dog show trying to resolve it, because you now need to make an application to the Reserve Bank. The Reserve Bank then wants the source of the funds, okay, before they can do that. Whereas all we do is we make sure that this is done perfectly from start to finish. The third benefit, and in my opinion, probably the most important reason is protection of funds. Okay, so you have things like AML, so anti-money laundering. Okay, there's compliance. We vet both the sender and the beneficiary of the funds at all times. Okay, they're run through sanctions checks. These sanctions checks obviously take into account, I think the real estate profession itself is highly regulated now in terms of source of funds and KYC, know your client. It is an obligation for all of us. It always has been in financial services. So we just go the extra mile in making sure that the funds that are being utilized to purchase the property are of a legitimate means. So ultimately taking care of the risk for your agents, the risk for your conveyances, okay, making sure that the beneficiary of the funds, so if the money is going overseas, all bank accounts have been vetted. So it really just protects your client from start to finish, being behind a reputable firm that really does have your best interests at heart, because it's ultimately how we make our money. Okay, we make our money on volume. We're a volume-driven business. We don't necessarily need to sell one house a month to make a good living. I've got to do thousands of payments. So we do thousands of payments at small margin as seamlessly as possible, making sure that both our partner, meaning the eXp agent, and their client, okay, are getting the best possible service along the way.
Oh, fantastic. Because, and you said that rules and regulations, this is a key part to our business. The regulations in the real estate industry has really started to step up, especially
Absolutely.
around FICA and money laundering, which is a big part of it. On the back of that, when you're actually getting money in from different international countries, are there specific countries that are almost flagged immediately and becomes almost the biggest challenge to get money in? Or is it pretty much the same, doesn't matter where the money's coming from?
No, listen, there absolutely are countries that you aren't going to get money out of. So the likes of Russia is going to be a challenge at the moment. There's global sanctions on many countries. North Korea, Iran, you're not going to get money out of those countries. Certain countries are pretty much blacklisted in terms of funds, okay? Other countries might require extra due diligence, okay? So meaning, you're always going to have to provide source of funds. Source of funds, where did you get the money? That's a given, okay? But the interrogation of those source of funds will apply to certain countries that have enhanced due diligence requirements. The lists are quite long, dependent on the actual queries. But generally speaking, there's probably 40 or 50 countries which we would all know that aren't flagged, and it's quite seamless. And then there's other countries where we need to justify the funds that are coming in.
Perfect. So let's look at the good countries,
Sure.
because these are obviously the easier countries that we operate,
Yes.
which will be our bigger numbers. We have an agent who gets an inquiry from a potential client, and we'll just use the UK as an example.
Sure.
Client is now looking to buy a property in South Africa. They go through the offer process, they signed all the documents, they're going to pay cash, and the attorneys send the banking instructions through to Now, this is where Currencies Direct, where do you step into this particular process to make sure that that flow is coming through as smooth as possible?
Listen, so essentially we can step in from the start or the end, to be honest. So in many instances, what we do say to agents is, as soon as you get an inquiry from a German or a British client, an international, introduce them to us. Not simply for our benefit, in actual fact for yours too, because what happens is that we ultimately become part of your value add proposition. So we're actually there working on your behalf to get these funds in. The referral is then allocated to your agent in any case. So even if they don't end up buying the house through you, they might buy it through a competitor, but the lead has been received from your business and our team is working that at that point in time. So in a perfect world, we would get our leads at that point in time on first inquiry. You're going to package us as a value add to your business. We can seamlessly help you bring your money in. Whether you buy this house or not, we've got the perfect partner to help you do this. Okay, or you've sold the house. Okay, you've already sold the house. Offer to purchase has been signed. The deposit is required, and it's coming from a UK national. Okay, you're going to send us your client's details. In an ideal world, it's a warm handover. A warm lead is obviously always far more beneficial than simply just giving us a name and number to call. When it's a warm handover and introduction and the person is expecting our call, then the conversion from our side is far easier. Okay, we would then contact your client and give him the value proposition, explain the process. A British citizen, let's say for instance, he's got to send us a 2 million rand. Okay, let's round the pound down to 20 to 1. Okay, so it's 100,000 pounds is ultimately what he needs to pay us. What he does is he pays his 100,000 pounds to our account in the UK as pounds. Okay, so for him, it's a simple local transaction from Barclays to Barclays, from HSBC to Barclays, whatever it may be. We then do the conversion into rand, and the exact 2 million rand lands in their conveyances account. Okay, so the conveyances account will be given to us by the actual client. Okay, and then we obviously run that account through a variety of sanctions and vetting checks to make sure that it is a legitimate bank account. Okay, we will always vet bank accounts verbally. Okay, your biggest risk in terms of payments ever going missing is really phishing. So it's when people intercept your emails. They intercept your email and then they send through and they amend the bank account details to be their own, and that's how money goes missing. We negate that by verbally confirming with the client on each and every transaction, irrespective of the amount that is going. So in terms of that, should leads at any point in time where you believe that we can add value, plug us in. The sooner the better, because then the client is also very aware of the process. Fortunately, our market isn't as unknown globally as it is potentially in South Africa. Internationals don't use their banks for cross-border payments. Banks are inherently expensive. There's a reason that they get to sponsor a number of English Premiership football teams. It's not because they're not making money. So really what we do is at scale, we can buy currency from the same bank that your client might bank with at a far cheaper price. And I can even add on a margin and make a bit of money for both of us, okay, and offer them more value through the chain.
So there it is. So right at the beginning, get that lead, build that warm connection relation through to your particular client. So Currencies Direct can actually then step in as a value-added partner. So let's extend on this particular example. So the client is buying a property in South Africa, £20,000 or £100,000, 2 million rand. And they've now made that particular payment. Now, I know from an agent's point of view, they're waiting for the guarantee in South Africa to be met. They want to know that the money has landed. What is the typical duration from a clean deal? Let's talk about a deal with no hiccups, nothing that's going to break it. So an absolute perfect deal. The client in the UK presses that payment button. It goes through to your bank, Barclays, transfer to South Africa and landing into the conveyancer's account? What is the best case scenario? No hiccups along the way.
Stuart will have the money there within 2 days. So irrespective, 1 to 2 days. If there is a delay, it doesn't tend to be on our side. A delay is sometimes held from the recipient bank. Okay. So as much as we've got compliance requirements, so do some of the banks in South Africa. So they might have the funds land and then they'll do due diligence, which might delay it a day or two. But 99% of the payments that we make are within 2 days of clearing. So it's very, very straightforward and seamless.
So everything is nice and clean. It's 48 hours when it goes through. And I know that this is something that we all get encouraged with. But I've heard stories where people have done payments by themselves and they've gone 3, 4, 5 weeks without it actually coming through. So what would be reasons around that? And the reason why I want to bring this up, because when we're talking with clients and they go, but I can do it myself, our agents can now be educated and say, well, do you know about X, Y, and Z that could delay the process? What could delay the process? And even from your side, you're handling everything. What could be the biggest delays that could push it up to weeks instead of just the 20?
There tends to only ever be really one reason that delays a payment, and that's enhanced due diligence. Okay, so all individuals that make payments are sent through sanctions checks, okay, PEP screening. Sometimes you've got a similar name to somebody that might be politically exposed person. They have to sit and actually do due diligence on that person prior to understand that it's not actually the same human being that's sending the money, that these can be delayed. The way that we negate that is we obviously do all of the screening prior to transaction taking place. And we've got automated systems that run them through these screening processes to make sure and manage accordingly. You know, just because somebody's a politically exposed person doesn't mean we can't sell a house to them. It also doesn't mean that I can't transfer their money. What it does mean is that we have to verify the source of funds and interrogate slightly further to make sure that the funds that we are transacting in are legitimate. And 99.99% of the time they are. So delays are generally banking related. Okay, so what happens is if you're making a payment out to America, for instance, so you bank with Investec here in South Africa, okay, and you're sending it to Wells Fargo, the bank has to send it through what they call a nostro bank. So there's always a correspondent bank attached to every single transaction. That correspondent bank sometimes has to vet funds, okay? And if truth be told, and if anyone else tells you otherwise, it's not true, they're not even allowed to disclose to me why they're holding the funds. That's illegal. So when funds are held for 4 to 6 weeks, you just know that it is a compliance issue, but nobody is allowed to actually disclose that to us. But for everybody's safety on the call, money can never go missing. Okay, money can get stolen. That's a bit different to going missing. So when funds are sent off, the only way that you lose your funds is through those phishing type scams that you spoke about, where somebody amends your account details, changes the name, and your client executes on the back of an email that no one's actually ever seen, and somebody's just been purporting to be somebody that they aren't, and your client pays it to the incorrect bank account. That's stolen money, okay, which you can obviously claim back as well through a variety of proofs, and generally speaking, you can get your funds back. But money never goes missing, but it can be delayed, and those are the reasons that generally are holding back the clearance of those funds.
So compliance is this big part of it. And it's really, I mean, anything related to finances, compliance is probably the biggest part that sits on the back of it, with the regulations, the rules, and everything that goes forward. Absolutely. So here we've got Currencies Direct that can take funds from majority of the countries, as long as they're not on those, we call them the naughty lists, those blacklists, the ones that's going to get coal in a couple of days' time. But we're looking at getting those funds, whether it's coming into the country, whether it's going out of the country. Currencies Direct is really the value-added partner that assists in that transfer process by dealing with real humans, giving real phone calls to identify, to make sure the validity of the actual accounts, not just on an email, so those phishing scams actually disappear. Having offices pretty much across the globe in the major centers, which I think also gives a bit of value add as well, especially for those older clients that are really holding on to their funds. I'm pretty sure in different European countries, they could go into an office and actually speak to someone. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So we are busy rolling out a number of offices across the country. So at the moment, we've got an office in Paarl, we've got an office in Camps Bay, I've got an office in Somerset West. We've got our CBD office, which is our head office, where that's mainly operations, but we have clients in there on a daily basis if they need a little bit more hand-holding. We've got an office in Salt Rock, and then we've got an office in Rosebank in Johannesburg. Stuart, I think you hit the nail on the head. In terms of cross-border payments, and there's all this talk of seamless, instantaneous payments, very valuable, and we process thousands of payments daily on our app globally. Okay, so that's for a specific client. When you're talking about a house purchase, as you guys know, and I'm sure it's a sales pitch for every single estate agent, it is basically the biggest transaction that your client is going to make in their lifetime, is buying their home. Okay, the same applies. This is going to be the biggest transfer of funds they're ever going to make, is through utilizing us. So if we push them simply to an app and state this is seamless, that benefits us. It doesn't necessarily benefit the client. The client's going to have questions. The client needs sound advice, especially dealing in a market like South Africa, where there are regulations that constrain the free flow of funds. So we really just position it that it's client-centric, client-first. We have thousands of clients, South African clients, who bring their money back home via our app on an annual basis. No problem at all. And once they've moved to that stage, for sure, that helps me. That helps us scale. I suppose a bit like a virtual world. It assists with us growing our business. But we know that the actual route to the success of our business is the high-touch service, the hand-holding that we give, and the actual value that both estate agents and their clients are looking for. Clients that are buying in the upper echelons are not youngsters just starting out. Okay, they're exceptionally smart, successful people. They can utilize an app any second of the day. They know what to do. Okay, that doesn't necessarily bring them the comfort that an individual might do. So that's the way that we've positioned our business. It's slightly tech and human at the same time.
Absolutely. Well, that's what we want. Building relationships with people goes on an ongoing basis, and you don't build relationships with people just by sending them an email or sending them a WhatsApp. You've got to have some higher level interaction with them. Now, there's been a lot of talk with a lot of the agents that feel quite excited about this. And I think you guys call it client for life, where they're able to refer a client and maintain it, especially the clients that do ongoing types of transactions. What exactly is client for life if someone's heard it for the first time?
No, listen, with pleasure. So let's give some context here. So when you refer a client through to us, as an eXp agent, you are paid a referral fee. Okay, the referral fee it's basically 15% of the gross revenue that's generated from each transaction that we do. Okay, what that means is if you refer a client through to us, the client brings in their lump sum transaction. Okay, you earn your referral fee. What actually happens is that in many instances, your client actually becomes a regular client of ours. So it's not just a one-off transaction. We've got clients that have been using us for 30 years, for 20 years in South Africa. It's our 21st year in South Africa this year, in actual fact. Okay, and we've got people and agents and partners of ours that receive funds on a daily basis from existing clients that they have referred over the years. So, once you've got 50 clients in our network, they don't necessarily just bring in the 2 million to buy the house. They might be bringing in 50,000 Rand every month to live while they're here. Or they'll be sending money over to family to help sustain their lives wherever they may exist. You receive that same commission on all of your clients, provided you stay a client of ours. So meaning you're still referring to us. What that means is that you need to give us a new dealing client, so a new client that transacts every 12 months. Okay, within a 12-month basis, that keeps your account active. If you referred a client to me in September last year, okay, and you haven't referred another client to us until, up to date now, we would have stopped paying you after 12 months on that initial client. If you had referred another client to us in August, you would then ultimately be paid on both of those clients for the next 12 months. And then another client in next July. Now you've got 3 clients in your pipeline, okay? You're building up a new revenue stream, okay? And this revenue stream, you will be exceptionally surprised how quickly it grows, how often people need to move money. Cross-border payments is not a unique thing anymore. Everybody, each one of us has got family in another country. We all know friends that are moving to another country. We all know friends that are coming back to our country. So it's very, very common, and it is an absolute way that we can enhance another revenue stream for you. So if that makes any sense, Stuart, that's pretty much the client for life model. You stay our partner. We keep paying you on all of the referrals that you've given us over the years, provided they're still transacting. If they've used up all their money, then there's going to be no more to earn. But it's very unlikely that an international buying a house in South Africa just stops there. He doesn't stop there. He needs to bring money in to sustain himself. South Africans that are immigrating, there's limitations. You know, there's only X amount of money that they can send this year. So you've got a discretionary allowance of R1 million. I've got clients that have been using their R1 million with me for 15 years. Okay, every year they do 1 transaction a year through us, and they send R1 million each year overseas. They can send 10 million through their foreign investment allowance, but that just doesn't apply to wealthy people with R1 million and 10 million. The same applies to people sending 100,000. When people send money overseas, it becomes a regular occurrence. So we try and create the energy to get more referrals and leads from your teams by keeping you in the earning side of this transaction. So I think it's a very, very attractive process and system, and our CRM system tracks it on a daily basis for you.
Fantastic. So client for life, this is really what you're doing in your particular real estate business. You don't just help a particular client buy or sell a property and then say, thanks for the commission, cheers. You actually continue that as an ongoing relationship. Why? Because they'll give you repeat business, which is always fantastic, but they'll also give you referral business. And the same applies with Currencies Direct. Once that one client comes in, don't just say, hey, thank you, and leave it from there. You will continue that relationship building with that particular client. If they had a great experience, which I know they will with Currencies Direct, what's going to happen? They're going to say, hey, I've got a friend that's coming out. I've actually got a brother that's coming out. And that's where the repeat and the referral business is going to come in. If you can add that value-added partner that makes it an absolute smooth transition to buy properties in South Africa, you're actually going to find your way of finding more potential buyers that are going to see the market in South Africa as well, really discounted. And that's going to benefit you in multiple ways. So make sure that you continue those relationships. Make sure that you're always asking the question, hey, do you have anybody else? Do you know of anybody else that's looking at buying or moving money or coming into South Africa? The more you get that exposure, the better it is for yourself and as you're going to start growing your business. Matt, I want to thank you so much for coming on to this particular session. It's been an absolute honor just to go through Currencies Direct. I've learned quite a lot. I didn't realize that Currencies Direct, and I actually did the research just before. I was 30 years old. I was like, this is amazing. In South Africa, 2004, you're 21 years old. Yeah. You're actually at the legal age now to actually say that you're an adult. About time, exactly. Now you can really go out and party. So, Matt, any final words, thoughts, or comments from yourself before we close up?
Listen, I just think just to highlight what a pleasure it has been for our business to align with eXp. You know, to see eXp's growth over the past 2 years has been exponential, exceptional, even from our side. The amount of the way that your business and your agents have welcomed us has been nothing but outstanding across all the regions. We service every region in South Africa. We've got staff members that call on eXp, not that there are that many offices, but the individual agents. We get to present at all of your functions that you have. It's been absolutely incredible, and we only wish the best for you. And I think that the proof is in the pudding. We can see that eXp is going places, and I suppose I wish you only the best and look forward to seeing each one of you at one of your functions in the near future. And I think eXp Cape Town is at eXp Con.
That's correct. That's correct.
That's coming up. So I'll be there personally. Looking forward to it, meeting people from all different regions, and the international support that you have seems to be outstanding as well. So yeah, I can only thank you guys. It's been amazing.
No, fantastic. Well, you brought in the last little component, which is the eXp Con, happening on the 17th and 19th of February. And this is going to be an amazing, amazing event where you actually get to meet all our platform providers, our service providers in person. So it's great if you're wanting to come and meet Matt. And remember, it's always great to come up, shake his hand and say, Matt, I've just given you business. I'm looking for more, and really just carry on that, because I'm sure Matt at the end of it is going to go, this is unbelievable, the amount of people that are coming through. Matt, again, I want to thank you for your time, for coming on, sharing everything about Currencies Direct. I know that there's so much more that we could have spoken about, but I want to keep it really to the high level, pulling back the curtain so that we can actually see what happens a little bit behind the scenes. So that really gives us that level of confidence when we're talking with our clients. So Matt, again, thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks, everyone.
So from myself, Stuart, I want to thank all of you for coming on. It's been an amazing journey. We took a look at different suppliers, different platform providers to see what they do for us and how they help us, how they become the value add for your business. So do look out for more sessions that are coming out in the future. So from myself, Stuart, you have a fantastic day further. Cheers for now.